There is a cell line in nearly every biology lab on Earth. A woman never consented to it. A doctor later injected those same cells into people who never consented either. I'm a surgeon. Informed consent is not paperwork to me. It is the line between medicine and something else. This doctor understood that line perfectly. He chose to ignore it anyway. July 1963, Brooklyn, New York. 22 elderly patients were injected with live cancer cells. None were told what was in the syringe. 3 doctors on staff refused to take part. The man behind the research was not a fringe figure. He was a respected oncologist at one of America's top cancer institutes. His science was taken seriously. His methods were not. 3 doctors resigned rather than comply. One board member compared it to Nazi experiments. The doctor lost his license for exactly 1 year. Then, a major cancer organization made him vice president. Chester Southam was born in 1919. He trained in immunology and oncology. He rose to chief of virology at Memorial Sloan Kettering, one of the most respected cancer institutions in the country. By the 1950s, Southam had a real scientific question. Cancer patients seemed slower to reject foreign tissue. He wanted to know why. Was it the cancer itself, or simple physical weakness? To test this, Southam needed to inject live cancer cells into human bodies. He believed healthy immune systems would always reject the cells. In this narrow sense, he was largely correct. Being correct did not make the method acceptable. Southam needed subjects who could not easily refuse. He found them first in a place where refusal was already difficult: a state penitentiary. In 1952, at the Ohio State Penitentiary, Southam began injecting inmates. Convicted killers, forgers, and armed robbers sat on wooden benches. They waited to be called forward one by one. A witness account from the period described the process. Novocaine first, then a tattoo needle to mark the site, then a syringe filled with millions of cultured cancer cells. Some inmates received the injection for the first time. Others were already on their second or third round. The cells failed to take hold. Their bodies rejected the cancer completely. Prisoner experimentation was legal and common in America at the time. This was true even after Nazi doctors used the same defense at Nuremberg. No one questioned Southam's choice of subjects. Over the following decade, Southam expanded his research. He eventually injected cancer cells into an estimated 600 people. Some had cancer already, many did not. Almost none gave real consent. When he explained anything, Southam often said only that he was testing for cancer. He never said he was giving them cancer cells. He never said what he was watching for. The cells Southam used were not generic lab material. They were HeLa cells, taken in 1951 from a patient named Henrietta Lacks, without her knowledge, in a Baltimore hospital. Henrietta Lacks died within the year. She never knew her cells had been taken. Her family received nothing for decades. Her cells became the foundation of modern cancer research. By 1963, those same cells were injected into new patients. Cells taken from an unconsenting woman 12 years earlier, given to people who also had not consented. The circle closed. Southam needed a new source of subjects. He found it at the Jewish Chronic Disease Hospital in Brooklyn. Its director of medicine agreed to let Southam use the hospital's own patients. The arrangement was made in early July 1963. Hospital staff would inject 22 patients with foreign cancer cells. Funded by the US Public Health Service and the American Cancer Society, the patients selected were not cancer patients. They were elderly, chronically ill, hospitalized for heart disease and degenerative conditions. Their ability to meaningfully consent was never seriously evaluated by anyone. On July 16, 1963, the injections were carried out. Foreign cancer cells were placed beneath the skin on the front of each patient's thigh, at 2 separate sites on each leg. The patients were never told they were receiving cancer cells. In later testimony, the physicians explained their reasoning. The exact nature of the cells was, in their judgment, simply irrelevant. They also said they did not want to stir up unnecessary anxiety. The decision about what a patient needed to know was made entirely by the doctors, for their own convenience. Word of the plan reached 3 physicians on staff first. Doctors Avir Kagan, David Leichter, and Perry Fusco objected immediately. These were their own patients. They refused to allow it. Their objection did not stop the study. Staff proceeded with the injections anyway. They simply used patients who were not under the direct care of the 3 objecting doctors. Kagan, Leichter, and Fusco did not stay quiet. All 3 resigned their positions at the hospital. Then they went to the press and to the New York State Board of Regents. They also brought their concerns to William Hyman, a lawyer who sat on the hospital's board. Hyman was not measured in his response. He compared the experiment directly to Nazi medical atrocities. Hyman said plainly he did not want human beings used as experimental subjects, the way Nazi doctors had used prisoners. He filed a lawsuit demanding access to the hospital's research records. That lawsuit became a landmark case in New York law. It established something simple but important. A hospital board member had standing to demand real accountability for how patients were treated. The New York State Attorney General took the complaint seriously. He pushed the Board of Regents toward the most serious outcome available, stripping Southam of his medical license entirely. The Board of Regents investigated and reached its conclusion. Southam and the hospital's medical director were found guilty of fraud, deceit, and unprofessional conduct. Their licenses were suspended for 1 year. The suspension, however, did not last very long. It was stayed by the board, then quietly downgraded to probation. Neither man spent a single day actually unable to practice medicine. The scandal had consequences beyond Southam himself. It became one of several cases cited in a landmark 1966 paper. That paper helped push American medicine toward requiring real informed consent. Institutions receiving federal research funding began examining their own policies, for the first time in a systematic way. Many discovered they had no real protection for research subjects at all. None of that reform reached back to punish Southam further. His probation ended on schedule. His license was fully restored. His career did not merely survive, it continued to rise. In 1964, 1 year after his license was reinstated, the American Cancer Society elected Southam vice president. The organization that had funded his research now gave him its own title. Southam went on to lead the American Association for Cancer Research as well, a separate and highly respected professional body. Within the very same field of oncology he had disrupted. In 1971, Southam moved on to Thomas Jefferson University. He continued working there as a respected researcher until the very end of his career. He died in 2002 at 82. He was never stripped of his standing in the field. He was not remembered publicly in his lifetime for the 22 patients in Brooklyn. He was remembered as a pioneer. Southam was not the only cancer researcher of his era accused of this. In 1931, a Rockefeller pathologist named Cornelius Rhodes studied anemia in Puerto Rico. He left a darker legacy too. Rhodes wrote a private letter, later discovered by a colleague. Using ugly, racist language, he claimed he had deliberately harmed his Puerto Rican patients. He even claimed to have killed several. 2 separate investigations followed. One was ordered by Puerto Rico's governor. One was conducted internally by the Rockefeller Foundation. Neither found evidence that patients had actually died under suspicious circumstances. Rhodes later called the letter an ugly joke, written in anger after his car was vandalized. His documented racism was real. His career was never meaningfully damaged by any of it. The pattern across both cases was strikingly similar. A respected researcher, an institution unwilling to look closely, and a population treated as simply available. Prisoners, the poor, the chronically ill. What made the Brooklyn case different was not the ethics, it was the timing. By 1963, 3 doctors were finally willing to say no, publicly, and risk their own careers doing it. I want to speak about this from inside the operating room. Informed consent is not an abstract idea to me. It is a conversation I have before every single procedure I perform. When I explain a risk to a patient, the decision about whether it matters is not mine to make. It is theirs. Southam's defense inverts that completely. He decided for them. The patients at that hospital were elderly and chronically ill. That made them convenient subjects, not appropriate ones. Vulnerability should have demanded more caution from the researchers. It demanded the opposite. What stays with me most is not Southam's choice. Powerful people making convenient choices is nothing new. What stays with me is what 3 ordinary doctors did with far less power. They had no institutional protection. They were staff physicians, not department heads. Refusing meant risking their own positions. They refused anyway. Then they made certain the refusal became public. There is no monument to Kagan, Leichter, or Fursko. Their names appear mostly in footnotes, in legal citations, in the fine print of ethics textbooks most people will never open. The Nuremberg Code, written after the war, required voluntary consent for any human experiment. Southam violated that principle in an American hospital, less than 2 decades after it was written. The cells Southam injected trace back to Henrietta Lacks, a woman whose body was treated as raw material in 1951. In 1963, other bodies were treated exactly the same way. Nobody involved set out to be remembered as a villain. Southam believed, correctly in a narrow sense, the cells posed no lasting danger. Being scientifically correct did not make it ethical. That distinction sits at the center of almost every controversy in medical history. What is scientifically true and what is ethically permissible? The two are never automatically the same thing. The hospital building still stands in Brooklyn today, repurposed, its original name mostly forgotten by the neighborhood around it. Nothing on the site marks what happened there in 1963. Informed consent forms are now completely routine in medicine, printed, signed, and filed before nearly every procedure performed in this country. Most patients who sign them will never know why. It exists because of people like Kagan, Leichter, and Fursko. They had almost nothing to gain and everything to lose. They said no anyway, in a hospital hallway in 1963. Chester Southam died in 2002. Most obituaries did not mention the 22 patients in Brooklyn. They remembered the science instead. The two things were never actually separate at all.